Hey guys, welcome to the Dr. Mudgil podcast. We are now in the first week of February. God, this year is already flying by, February 2023, and there's been a lot going on this week. But what's really been kind of on my mind is Tom Brady. You know, anyone who's a sports fan, Super Bowl's coming up in like another week and a half or so. And, Tom Brady is retiring for the second time, but I do think this time it's actually for good. It sounds like he was, pretty serious about retiring. And it just had me thinking about his incredible career. Now, I'm a Giants fan, and I never liked Tom Brady, just being a Giants fan, but I always have respected and admired Tom Brady. In fact, he's an incredible human. This is a guy who is obviously the greatest football player to ever do it. The greatest quarterback to ever play the game. He's played 23 seasons in the NFL, won 7 Super Bowls, 6 with the Patriots, 1 with the Bucks, and broke every record there is for a quarterback in the NFL. But when you think back to his story, it's actually a remarkable one because he's a guy who was picked up in the 6th round of the 2000 NFL draft. He was the 199th draft pick. There were 6 quarterbacks that were picked ahead of him in that draft. And this is a guy who basically came to the NFL, who essentially, I guess whoever drafted the Patriots were the ones who drafted him essentially as a backup quarterback. And he turned that narrative into, having the most amazing career of any NFL player who's ever played the game. Now, when I think about his success, and he's in the category, Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Serena Williams, Tiger Woods, Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal. I mean, these are guys who are and gals who are the greatest at whatever it was that they did, whatever sport that they were competing in. And, there's a common thread between all of these humans. And, I love exploring that, what makes some people just so incredible and amazing and, gifted and accomplished at the things that they're doing. And, there's many factors that go into this. And, each of these amazing humans has their own story. But when I think about Tom Brady, I think a lot of it comes down to self-belief and obviously an incredible work ethic and attention to detail. So those are the 2 separate categories. I mean, there's a million other things also that play a role, but with Tom Brady, he played football at the University of Michigan, which is an amazing football program, an amazing school, but he was actually the 7th string quarterback when he started at Michigan, and he worked his way up to being the starter his junior and senior year. But the coach of Michigan at that time, although he started every game, he wasn't the guaranteed starter. He wasn't the marquee player for Michigan. There was always a fight to see who was going to start. Even in his senior year, I think he would play the first quarter, the other quarterback would play the second quarter, and then the coach would decide who played the third and fourth quarter. He had a great college career as well. But he was never coming out of college oh, this guy's going to be the greatest football player ever. And then I'm sure you've all seen those pictures at the NFL Combine, where he kind of is this skinny fat dude, doesn't really look like the amazing athlete that he is. He was slow. And like I said, he was drafted 199th. He was 199th pick. And the narrative that was basically created for him and, what people believed Tom Brady would be was essentially a backup quarterback. And then maybe he would have a career in coaching or something like that. No one ever thought he would have this amazing career that he had, except for him. He didn't allow other people's narrative to pollute the narrative he had for himself in his mind. And that's such a powerful thing, that self-belief, on a much lesser scale, on a personal note. When I was a kid, I was kind of lost. My mom was a single parent. She was working all the time. My granddad was, the warm body in the house, but really there was no oversight. And, I was a lost soul growing up. I would get into all kinds of trouble, get suspended from school. I did poorly academically. I was always, quote unquote smart. I would do well on standardized tests and those sorts of things, but I would get D's. I was really a really bad student. And I remember, and for some reason, this is stuck in my mind, and maybe it's like a chip on my shoulder, but I remember my granddad once told my mom, my brother who's 7 years older than me was, much more, he rode the straight line. He was a great student, and he got into great colleges, and he was just an all around good, easy kid. And I remember my granddad once said to my mom, "Is like, don't expect too much from the little one. He's probably not going to go very far, but you should really kind of focus on your older child." And it's funny because I guess there's times. I mean, I'm not now like an old man that I am. I don't really I don't think about that. But I think when I was younger, it was like this chip I had on my shoulder. Like I was thinking to my, and even at that age, I remember thinking like, wow. I was like, the narrative. Even my teachers kind of thought I was like a deadbeat and wasn't really going to go anywhere. And I mean, most of them. I had a few that were very inspiring and to help me along the way. But it would have been very easy for me to say, you know what, I'm kind of like an F up, and I'm just gonna have, that's who I am, and that's what my life is gonna be, right? But in my mind, I had a different narrative for myself, and this narrative kind of evolved when I started hanging around higher quality people, people who inspired me, who are my peers, but were also my mentors and who I looked up to. And the narrative I started creating for myself was a lot different, and that narrative continues to evolve even to this day. There's always like you're always trying to do something better, be better, work towards a bigger and better goal. But going back to Tom Brady, I think in his mind he was like, listen, I'm going to be the best quarterback that there is, and that was the narrative he created for himself, and he lived that narrative, right? Now, even though you create this narrative for yourself, like Tom Brady in his mind had this narrative that he was going to be the greatest football player to ever play the game, the hard part is executing that narrative, right? So it's important to have self-belief and create a narrative that, have lofty goals, but the devil's in the details, right? So that comes to the second part of why Tom Brady, in my mind, was so amazing. And that's the execution of that narrative. And that comes down to, hard work and attention to detail, accountability, all things that are critical for success. So, I'm sure many of you are aware of like how obsessive he was about his training regimen and his diet. He would only eat certain foods, and he would sleep a certain way and have to get X amount of hours of sleep and drink, X amount of liters of water. His workouts weren't the traditional types of workouts that, most football players are doing. He wasn't into lifting weights, but he was more into resistance bands and lengthening his muscles. And he believed like having long, soft muscles is what allowed him to have this long career that was, he had his injuries here or there, but, he had a very long career, and he was healthy most of the time. And it's those details, like, his incredible attention to detail. And, all of the amazing people I mentioned, Serena Williams and her practice regimen, and, she was the GOAT of tennis, and, incredibly attentive to detail in her practice regimen, and the execution of whatever her goals were, which was basically to be the best tennis player to ever live. Tiger Woods, the same sort of thing, there's the way he practiced and how much he practiced and the attention to detail that went into his game is legendary. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, all of these folks, they're amazing. They were amazing, and LeBron James continues to be amazing at what he's doing, but it's what happens in the offseason, right, that makes him so great. LeBron James is always conditioning. You'll see on his Instagram that he's like, what he's doing in the offseason. He's always working on his getting his body into better shape to allow him at his age to still dominate and, just dunk on guys who are like 20 years younger than him. And, it's that attention to detail and then that accountability, the narrative that, say, a guy like LeBron James has for himself is, he wants to dominate basketball and he still wants to be in the game when his son plays his rookie season in the NBA. And, in order for him to do that, he's got to hold himself accountable to that goal, right? So he's got to keep his body in shape, got to continue to work out, has to eat right, and all of that attention to detail and being accountable to what your goals are, what enables him to perform at such a high level. And I think he's like 37 now, which is incredible. Tom Brady held himself to that standard as well. To be a quarterback in the NFL for 23 years up until the age of 45, which was his goal, by the way. He said, I think in some interview many years ago, that he wanted to continue to play the game until 45, and still be relevant at that age, and that's exactly what he did. So not only did he have this narrative in his mind that he was going to be the best to ever do it, he executed that narrative by being incredibly attentive to detail, and holding himself accountable. Now, the reason why I'm talking about all of this stuff is that greatness is within all of us. We're all so capable of doing amazing things, but a lot of times we're held back by the narrative that's created for us by other people. Our parents may not think that we have, great potential, or, our friends might say, you're never going to be able to do that. And what's important is that, we all create our own narrative. What is it that you want to do? What do I want to do? And then, executing that narrative is obviously where all the hard work happens, right? And you have to put in that relentless hard work. You have to be attentive to every detail that's going to get you closer to your goal. And then you have to hold yourself accountable. And I say this all the time, the focus of every day and should be, and it doesn't matter what your goals are, you can have multiple goals, and the goal of every day is to focus on getting that one daily win that's going to get you one step closer to your goal every day, no matter what. And no matter what is the accountability part of it, right? And that's what, Tom Brady did. That's what Michael Jordan did. Serena Williams did. LeBron James did. Tiger Woods did. These folks have a lofty narrative for themselves. They're attentive to detail, and they hold themselves accountable to make sure they achieve their goals. So those are my long thoughts of this week. And, just always remember that there's greatness within each of us, but we have to work hard to unharness that greatness. And we do that by holding ourselves accountable, being attentive to detail, etc. So with that, I will see you all next week. Let's get it.